Hey, Simon here with another Too Many Projects. I am engaging in some maintenance on the XTZ here today, and I thought I'd bring you along. Hello, future Simon here. Let me just briefly interrupt this broadcast to say that there's a big time jump in this video. I did start this service last year and intended to get it up here, didn't get round to it, and then I had some issues. So do stick around to the end of the video where I show you what I did wrong and fix a couple of little problems that I found along the way. So there's 3 jobs on the list today. I've been looking at the manual and realised I may have misjudged how short the service intervals are on this thing. You're actually meant to service it every 6,000 miles or every 6 months. I've been keeping up with mileage intervals but not with time intervals, so it's time to change the oil and it's time to change the coolant as well, so I'm just going to go through those. The other thing is that if you check the previous video that I did on the carburetor, link up here or something, managed to get it running really well with the exhaust that I've got on here. That was a long while ago, and you know, it's not the end of the world starting it now, but it's not on the button, and I'm going to predict after 4 starts it'll stay running. It's my prediction. One. 2. Sometimes it goes on 3, sometimes on 4 if it's a bit colder, but it feels like it might go on 3 this time. I'm going to leave it running now because we're going to change the oil, so I want to get it warmed up. And I'm going to chuck it around the side here onto the hard standing where I'm going to drain it in a minute. Now, the bash plate is fairly straightforward. It's just 3 bolts. That came off easily, didn't it? The first place to drain is this frame drain, and I note that it is conveniently located next to this now incredibly hot exhaust header. It's also going to shoot oil out this way, so I'll just crack it open a bit, and then I'll try to take it out one-handed without burning myself. Try and actually catch the oil that comes out. Oh my goodness. So the good news is we've got a little bit of engine oil on the tyre. Sorry, that's the bad news. The good news is the mudguard almost perfectly deflects the oil into the receptacle, which is clearly in the wrong place. And then the next hole is right back here by the centre stand, which is currently the lowest point on the engine. So this time I'm going to catch the oil, a bit late for this now, I'm going to catch the oil in the funnel and funnel it into the receptacle instead. This oil has been in at least a year and it is looking pretty dirty, pretty black. It's been a classic Simon mess all over the patio oil change. No lessons learnt last time, clearly. And then the last place to drain the oil out of is this oil filter. The manual says to remove this top air bleed screw, and then we remove this bolt first, and the oil should start to drain out when that one's just loose at the bottom there, before we remove it completely and replace that filter. Right, so air bleed screw first, completely removed, and then let's loosen this bottom nut. There we go. Alright, so that is all in all a very messy way of draining the bike. So we are using a 1030 oil. The bike asks for a 1030 or a 2040 depending on the season, and we're in spring now, so I'm going for the 1030. I think that's the right way to do it. And just make sure the rubber seals are lubricated, and we push that in like that, make sure it's there, and we're popping that back on there like that. And these are going up to 10 Newton meters, which is about that tight. New copper washer on the bleed screw, and that is going up to 5 Newton meters because it's copper washer and it's really nice and soft. That's a new washer on the crankcase drain bolt, 30 Newton meters. Right there. New copper washer. My torque wrench doesn't go down to 18, so we're going to use years of experience to judge 18 Newton meters, which is there, just there. It's about double 10, a bit less than double 10. Now we're going to clean up. We're going to clean up again, clean up all the tools, and start putting some oil in the top because that's all the bottom closed up. And so the dipstick is attached to the filler cap, and take my freshly cleaned funnel. No point in washing the old engine oil back in, let alone any grit that's been thrown up. Now the capacity is 3 litres, something like 2.7 for a filter change. These are 1 litre bottles, so I can just go mad with the first bottle or two. It's all got to go in, definitely. 1 bottle down. Bottle number 2 down. And I'm going to try and put in, I reckon, just like 400 ml. Okay, we've put in about 2.4 litres there. Right, so I'm going to leave that a minute. Leave that a minute to settle. And as anticipated, it's not up to the empty mark yet, so I'm going to throw a little bit more in. Just don't want to overfill it, so maybe, I don't know, 100 ml at a time. Right, dipstick in. Final check says halfway between the full and empty mark, so that's where we're going today. Let's see if she runs. Of course the oil's cooled down now, so I'll give her a little choke. There we go. And the last thing to do is going to be to clean this crap off and stick the bash plate back on. I will also go for a run tomorrow, check the oil before and after. I might need a little bit more of a top up, but that's good. That's good. I'm not going to lie, it's been a hot 5 minutes since I changed the oil and was about to start doing the coolant. I know I'm wearing the same hat and I put the motorbike in the same place, so a lot of you will think it's exactly the same day, but actually it's a completely different seat, so I've never got quite around to it. So even built a new wall in the shed, that's how long it's been. So check the coolant level. We first of all flip this side panel. It's got the, you can actually see it there kind of on the clear tube, but I know it needs changing. So let's whip that side panel off anyway. It's just 2 Allen bolts at the front. And with that side panel off, you've got the reservoir here in a clear tube for reading how much is in the reservoir. This is right on the low mark, which is fine because we're changing it now, but I'll make sure to get it back up to the full mark. In order to drain the reservoir and then drain the radiator, I'm going to need to take everything apart. So that is the other air scoop, the 2 side panels, the seat and the tank. So the last 4 bolts for the tank are 1 and 2 on that side and 2 on the other side. They're quite tricky to get to, and they're particularly tricky to put back afterwards. Let's connect the fuel line from the tank. Back. Okay, so we've got our radiator cap right up here, filling into the top of the radiator there. This is, I'm guessing, our thermostat housing. The reservoir we need to, the procedure we're about to do is to drain the reservoir first, and then drain the radiator and engine from the water pump, which is down the bottom here. So I do need to get the bash plate off as well, the bottom of the engine. Now, the more observant among you will have noticed in the last video that the dirt that was in the bash plate here was black and wet and surrounding this area, and I have got a small oil leak on the bottom of the engine on the other side. It's really not very bad. What you're looking at there is the deposits after quite a few months, and so I'm just, until I get to the next oil change, which is not very far away now, I'm going to just be managing putting a bit more oil in the top before I go riding, making sure it's topped up. And then when I do the oil change, I'm going to change the gaskets and look into that sensor while the bike's empty. The hoses on the bottom here are just the eyeglass there that tells us how much is in the reservoir. The level is hard to see on the camera, but it's right behind that bracket there. And it's the black one we're going to take off first to drain the reservoir, which is a breather hose up to the filler neck. While I'm here, I'm going to take off this clear hose as well. It could do with a good clean. Maybe I can find a replacement today. It would be nice to be able to see through that one. That's its whole purpose after all. And whip the radiator cap off, and then this at the bottom of the water pump here is a drain plug. So I'd like to give the reservoir and the radiator a bit of a rinse today. So if I grab the wiring off the horn there, I have a plug with which I can get into the top of the reservoir directly. And so all I'm going to do is put a bit of a garden hose in the filler there, directly into the radiator as close as I can get to that top bit, and then turn the tap on to just really rinse through the radiator and catch what comes out on the other side, and then the same with the coolant out the holes at the bottom there, and just give it a quick rinse. And there. That's looking super clean. Same thing on this side, I'll just give a quick rinse in the reservoir there. Okay, I covered everything in water. Not ideal. Now we're putting this all back together. So that's the breather pipe there. I haven't got anything on hand that's going to replace this hose, and so I've given it a good clean, and it's more than clean enough to see the coolant level. I have put it on upside down because it's this bottom part that's nice to see through, the bit that's least useful to me. Whip the bottom hose back on. Drain plug back in the water pump there. You should have a new gasket. I haven't done that today, and as a result I'm going to go 2 Newton meters above the specification, which is on the screen right now. Just crush the existing copper washer down a smidge further. Got some ready mix coolant, which I'm assured is the correct sort for this bike. Now, the capacity is
1.2 litres.
Okay. And from the top we're going to fill right up to below the breather hose that comes off here. And then afterwards we're going to make sure that the reservoir is filled up. So Alright, so that's actually filled up to right below the breather hose on filler cap there. We're going to fill the reservoir up to the full mark. Everything topped up, radiator cap back on, and going to spend the next 10 minutes cleaning off all the coolant I've spilt everywhere. I'm just sticking the bash plate back on here, and then before I put it back together, I've got the bodged up petrol delivery system. So the bucket is linked to a fuel hose. The end of the fuel hose from the bucket I'm just going to put into the feed, feeding into the bike. So we should be able to run it for a short time like that. Hello, this is Future Simon jumping in again. I got a bit grumpy at this point because the motorbike wouldn't start after I changed the coolant. And there were two reasons for that. One, the starter clutch seems to be going. The starter motor runs without engaging with the engine. I might even be able to show you that now because I haven't fixed it yet. Perfect. Alright, that starter motor running like that without engaging with the engine very easily and just occasionally getting the engine turning is a symptom of the starter clutch going, and you know, the age of the bike, that's no surprise. I'll come back to that in a minute though. The second thing was, it does engage from time to time, so I was able to get the thing to turn over and it wouldn't start at all. Nothing would make it start. It started, it kicked, it ran for a second and died, and so I thought perhaps it's something to do with the fact that I'm using this bodged together petrol bucket and line going down from the ceiling, and maybe I've allowed a little bit of dirt to get in there and it's got into the carburettor or something like that. So this next part of the video, I invited my friend Pat over and we decided to just dismantle the carb and get it cleaned and see if we could work out why it wasn't starting in that regard. It's intermittent, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'll come back to that in a minute, as I say. I think from memory, if I take off the side panel from the airbox here where you access the air filter, same on this side, there's another panel that just comes off with some jizz screws. Then there's 3 bolts that hold the whole airbox in place, and then the bands on the front and back of the carburettor. And if I take off the bands on both sides of the carburettor, I can then actually slide the airbox back just a little bit, and that's enough to then get the carburettor out of this side. I think that's how it works. We'll try that. So with the airbox loosened up, you can see it's actually come back off the carb already. First thing to do is to take off all the hoses. I've started pulling these off, but I just want to make some notes on where they go, because I didn't last time, that was a disaster. So this, I've noted, is supposed to be attached into the manifold on the left side of the intake there, and it's come loose, so that could have been causing a vacuum problem. This is the fuel feed which goes onto the fuel tap, that's come off. Fuel pump's just down here out of view. These 2 pipes come down from the air intake, alright, and one of them goes into a T-piece. This goes down as a drain, and the T-piece goes onto the brass nipple there. This pipe, which was also in the air intake, goes into a T-piece in the centre between the 2 intakes on the carburettor. So that's going to come out with the carburettor, and then this is the fuel feed from the fuel pump, like that. And then we're going to choke in our 2 throttles to take off, so I'll do those next.
I also bought an edge trimmer. Yeah, it's moving. It's coming out.
That side's coming out, good. Okay, now I'll do this side and it'll go straight back in. There we go. Right, this is
It's happening.
the smoothest it's happened ever. So this is good. This piece of
It's happening.
metal thing there. We're going to spray some carb cleaner down the body of it and then move the bowl. Yeah.
Maybe you can take the jet and just spray it down.
We'll have a look at it. The main jet had fallen out last time I opened it, and I don't know why.
It should be screwed in.
Well, it was screwed in, but it just wasn't screwed in hard enough. I don't think. But that is knackered, so we should replace it. Alright, so there we go. We'll just give it a spray. Just give it a spray. Careful of some rubber things. And
Maybe.
And
I was going to say maybe we can remove the jet and
just make sure there's nothing in it. Yeah. Okay, so I've been quite brief with that, but in summary, everything in here seems fine. We've reset this idle mix screw to 2.5 turns. The only potential two things that we've found wrong at the moment are this little piece of pipe that links the bowl to this thingy coming off the bottom of the main side of the carburetor there. It looks a bit cracky, it's not terrible. I'm going to temporarily fix it with some heat shrink, but I'll get a proper piece of pipe on it ASAP. But it'll definitely last to test it today. Right, Pat's come up with a theory, which is probably right. This vacuum line comes from the fuel pump, which is just behind here. And this piece of metal coming out the end of it is a nipple that's meant to live in the manifold there. And when I just took it apart, this was completely loose. This side of the carburetor was very dirty. We were really worried about where that dirt was coming from. And the fact that there's a hole in the inlet manifold is not only going to have allowed dirt in, it's also going to allow a load of extra air into the mixture, which would stop it running very well. I'm just thinking about how to fix that piece of metal in the top there, because there is a metal core to some of this manifold, but it's mostly made of rubber. I can replace this manifold, but it would be the third time I've replaced these manifolds in a very short time. With they're Chinese copies, because the original Japanese versions aren't available anymore. And to be honest, the original Japanese versions, although they won't do this, aren't that good either. They have a tendency to dry out and crack and then not work properly. But I kind of want to repair this better rather than just buy another crap replacement. But that seems like a good theory as to why it's not starting well, because the mix is messed up. And it's quite probable when I took the tank off to change the coolant, I grabbed it and I might have just caught that pipe and it was enough to just pull it out, because it wasn't very good quality. And I'm actually going to put the tiniest bit of JB weld on the pipe here. The reason I'm reluctant to do that initially is just because I don't want to end up with JB weld stuck in the end, restricting the flow at all. But Pat's convinced me that I've got the skills to not do that. Alright. So it definitely goes in that way. I'm going to get it halfway in at the right angle. Sorry about that. The battery ran out during the really critical moment. It took us ages to get this in. The only thing I would note is that this piece that goes in between the two inlet sides of the carb, it's nice to get that on before you put the carb in. It was quite hard to get it back onto the nipple in there. And now we're just going to pull the airbox back into place. Badly. Alright, so it's just mocked up, it's just popped back together enough to work, so we've got some fuel feed. If it doesn't start perfectly first time, that's okay, but if it doesn't start the fifth time, we haven't solved the problem. Okay, so as you can hear at the end of that little day's work, engine starts. Starter clutch isn't working great, but the engine starts and it's sounding really good, which is fantastic. So looks like I just knocked that pipe out of the intake manifold when I was taking the tank off. Right now, before I look into starter clutch parts, which I know are really expensive and it's going to be really annoying, the part I did wrong is actually checking the oil level, something literally that basic. Now I did know and have had this bike for a while, and I know that when you check the oil level, give that a quick wipe, you don't screw the filler cap back in, you just place it down there, pull it back out. And I don't know how easy it is to see on the camera, but I'm above halfway between empty and full, but not quite full, which as far as I'm concerned, with a small oil leak in the bottom, is great, you know. What I've learned though is this is a dry sump motorcycle. This has oil in frame, so we haven't got a tank of oil at the bottom, which is usually in an engine where you would stick the dipstick, and so this is not the way to check the oil. To check the oil, you need to put the correct quantity of oil in. So with our oil and filter change, that would be 2.7 litres. With just an oil change, no filter, 2.6. Because the capacity total is 3 litres. So what we'd do is we'd go 2.6-ish, then we're going to start the bike and we're going to run it for 20 minutes, 15-20 minutes, not just warm, but 15-20 minutes, because it warms up super quick. The reason for it is it has to move the oil round the engine because it settles in the wrong place for testing the oil level. There's something to do with a pump that pumps it in one direction and a pump that pumps it in another direction, and then being unbalanced and it taking a length of time for the oil pressure in two different places in the engine to equalise. I don't fully understand it, and it's not important. What's important is you need to run the bike for 20 minutes, turn the bike off, set it on level ground, then check the oil level. So I'm going to do that now, because my concern is I may have slightly overfilled. If I've overfilled the engine and the oil pressure is too high, obviously that's quite damaging, but it also might cause the problems I'm having with the starter clutch. Maybe. That'd be nice, then I wouldn't have to fix it. So I'm about 20 minutes running there. Let's have a little look at what we've got. So, okay, it goes down. Not over full. It's up to exactly halfway, so it's gone down slightly in that time. Probably means the starter clutch is gone, doesn't it? Thank you for watching. Sorry about the slightly detached situation with this video. It's certainly been educational for me. Like and subscribe, that would be really cool. Thank you. And I will see you on the next one.